What's up, summoners? King Blair here. Today for Top 5 Tuesday, we're going to be doing the top 5 ML 5-star heroes I would like to see get a buff. So, you may be wondering, King Blair, why this top 5, right? There's so many other topics in the top 5, why this one in particular? Well, if you didn't know, right now we have a survey live by Smilegate, right? This is Smilegate Epic 7. Put out this survey that you can do right now to give your feedback on heroes you want to see buffed, as well as all the different things you want to see in the game change. If you guys didn't know, that's definitely something that I might do a video summarizing the discussion. A lot of people are upset at Smilegate for the balance of RTA, and they're trying to see what they can do to try to fix the game, trying to fix the heroes, see people's experiences. This is a really good time on the survey. And one of the main parts is going to be you can actually suggest who you would like to see to get a buff for 5-star, 4-star, 3-star for Moonlight, as well as 5-star, 4-star, 3-star for Covenant heroes, right? So it's a really good chance for you to actually provide your feedback, right? There's a lot of places you can provide feedback where you are, and I really do hope that they do make this public, because it would be amazing, A, for video, and B, for information for other players. So again, they are trying to make the game better. Hopefully they're successful in doing it and trying to get better balance. But with that, I'm going to be talking particularly here at the Moonlight 5-star hero, because we don't really have one that the community for sure knows who should really get buffed for the next 5-star. So I want to make a case for these 5. Again, for this top 5, opinions will vary very widely, right? Even though my number 1 right here, that could be not be your number 1. Maybe you want someone else to get buffed. Maybe I don't think that you needs to get buffed. One of these cases would be like Rylet, where I don't think he needs a buff in particular, but there are people that do. So again, at the end of the day, it's up to you. But these are the ones that I think could definitely use it, especially use it soon. I'm not going to cover our Covenant bookmark heroes. Every time I do this on stream and I'm like, oh, who should get a buff? I think we get to the Covenant heroes and it's just like every single one, right? So there's way too many for the Covenant heroes that are like in desperate need of buffs that it would be the top 20, right? So for that one, we're not going to do it. For the Moonlights, though, there is a lot of room there for talking about it, because they're actually, like, overall not horrible, right? Like, they're all usable, right? So that's one thing that I will say about the ML 5-stars right now in the game. They actually are usable, but they may not be as strong as people would like them to be and be able to be used as much as they want. But it definitely can get you wins, right? I'm not saying that these heroes are completely useless and worthless. It's just they're getting a little outdated, right? So with that, let's actually get right into it. So I'm going to speed through the honorable mentions, and I'll say why they're honorable mentions. These are just heroes that could use a little bit of tweaking, because they're kind of falling off a little bit, and it would be interesting to see them again. But again, they're not as needed, which is why in the honorable mention. But going really quickly through those honorable mentions, first we have none other than Blood Moon Haste. You might be wondering, Blood Moon Haste? Really? That's very interesting. Well, as you guys may know, we are not really in a revive meta, right? We don't see Arbiter Vildred, we don't see Maid, which has made Blood Moon Haste a little bit weaker. Now again, the reason why I say it's an honorable mention is because these type of units are heroes that are strictly based on how the meta is. If there's a lot of revive heroes in the meta, the hero will be good. If the meta has 0 revives, he just kind of falls off a little bit, right? So it's kind of time to see that dip. I don't think he needs a buff, but it's something to mention that, yeah, there are heroes like this that are going to be weak in certain meta, and that's fine. The one that I know a lot of people have actually been talking about that they would like to see a buff is actually going to be Faithless Lidica. The big thing that's actually stopping Faithless Lidica is actually going to be her base stats, believe it or not. Her kit is actually still very strong. It's for the most part pretty good, right? But the biggest thing is going to be the base speed is atrocious in today's meta. Why? Because Para is a whole 11 speed, a whole 13 speed faster. Rain is a whole 14 speed faster, and it's just making it so Faithless Lidica is not seeing as much use almost at all, just because this lower speed does not warrant what she's bringing, right? She's still a good initiator, and her S3 is really good in the right situation. I know more than one player that has seen a lot of success with her, but again, it's one of those things that is hard to justify her whenever we have all these hyper strong, hyper fast opener heroes, as well as really good anti-cleave out right now that could very much hinder Faithless Lidica. So it'd be interesting to see if they did tweak her. Again, she's doing fine. It would be cool to see a tweak, but more of an honorable mention, not something that I think it's like super urgent. But again, it's a hero that I could definitely see them and people wanting, right? Because people like to cleave, and she's a really cool looking unit, right? I've always liked how she looked. But again, really cool kid too. It's just the speed right now is one of the biggest things. So they have to make it and justify the skills with that low base speed. It had to have a little bit more impact on the match than just resetting a target's cooldowns for it to really make a big impact. On the other hand, we have none other than Tamara Luluka. This is one that we've been talking a lot about. Again, there is legend level players that are stomping with this unit. all ML heroes are usable. I want to reiterate that. All of them are usable. Tamaru Luka is one of the ones that a lot of the times, again, she just suffers more from there being way too many threats in the meta. Again, with the speed threats that are easily able to actually deal with her. She has no turn 1 protection, so she's not easily able to do her job. As well as just units like Celine getting buffed and Polides being around. Makes it a lot harder for you to actually use your Tamaru Luka. And even things like Rimuru, right? That are able to do their S2 and steal her barrier and attack buff. Again, can still have a lot of success, but not as strong. And of course, Ambitious Tywin. This one's kind of more of a me being greedy because I used to be a very, very, very avid Ambitious Tywin abuser. Back in the heydays, if you don't remember, he used to be one of the best units in the game. Right now, his passive against the teams that can put up debuffs is not enough because they usually will just outscale him because debuffers have had to get stronger. So this usually is not enough of a passive anymore, doesn't have enough impact. And the S3, it's on the other side of control. There's a lot of things that can actually counter control very reliably now. Mediator Carrick being one of the big ones, but just Dilibet as well, making him not as impactful in the meta. Again, he's not in like super bad need, but it would be cool to see a buff to him. Again, I still occasionally pull him out and he's still fun, and usually when I pull him out in the right situations, he still slaps, right? So he's still pretty decent, but again, could see a tweak in the future. But now it's gonna actually bring us to the top 5. So these top 5 are heroes that I could really see actually going on here, with the top 3 being the ones that I definitely think need to get taken a look at and that I personally will probably put on that list, right? But for the top 5, these are the heroes that I think need the most help because they just don't really have a slot right now. First is going to be, number 5 is going to be Specimen Cess. Now you may be wondering, why am I putting it this low, right? Does this kit work? Well, he's actually really unique in the fact that he does dummy damage whenever an enemy is stunned, right? And he's actually able to take an enemy out. There actually is, I believe, Queez, who's a Twitch streamer, who actually uses Specimen Cess in Legend and actually has decent success with him, right? With Solitaria and other like crown mages, right? So it's not a unit that's useless. And again, I want to reiterate it. All ML 5-star heroes are not completely useless. They can all be used. It's just a lot harder to actually use them. They require more gear, more setup, and are not as unique. The thing with Specimen Cess that right now makes him quote-unquote weak is the fact that he kind of has to rely on landing a stun, right? And with all the anti-control that there is, it is very unlikely they're going to be reliably landing these stuns. But whenever there's no stuns on the board or the opponent has a ways to actually deal with the stuns, he basically doesn't become that good, and it's not reliable enough. Even if you have units that can stun, it's just not reliable enough. And let's say, for example, Solitaria. Let's say you bring your Solitaria, US3. Well, there's a chance that their cleanser will outspeed you, or that they'll set up before you and kill you because you have no self-innate protection, right? You're gonna die if the opponent gets a turn with a high damage dealing unit, right? And if you could say, okay, I could build them pretty bulky, well then you have the new unit Hua who can just one-shot him, right? And at the same time, what he's getting essentially is damage, right? Really good damage, but it's conditional damage, whereas someone like Hua, basically unconditional S3 damage, essentially does the same role as Specimen Cess. Almost literally Specimen Cess, but just better, right? So it's one of those things that I definitely would like to see him be better. What I would like to see them buff, if they do end up buffing him, is actually ways to follow up in the stuns, right? If you actually have a way that when an enemy is actually stunned, if you're actually able to do that, that you're rewarded similar to how Ida is rewarded whenever you get a CR push, where he maybe can get a CR push whenever a unit is stunned and actually be able to follow up with the S3, kind of as activating his kill mode and actually going in and being able to assassinate the unit. That I think would be very unique. Besides that, honestly, it's just like a weird kid, right? They could always give him like self-protection, but I think that's really like lame because all the new heroes have self-protection. So I think it'd be really cool to make him a unit that really they double down on the stuns and make it so it's actually threatening if you're getting stunned, right? That it really synergizes it to the point that you can actually do it. I know some other people just want the stun mechanic to be gone and for him to just kind of be like this weird counter-attacking machine, but I think he would lose his identity and we would lose some versatility in the heroes. So that's what I personally would like to see with him, and he's a hero that could definitely use a tweak, again, because there's just units that do his job but better without having to be conditional, right? So it's one of those things that, again, you can't use them, very hard to use, very conditional, whereas there's units that have 0 conditions and are doing almost the exact same job. Now that's going to bring us to number 4, and it's going to be none other than Moonlight Aramentia. Moonlight Aramentia is not a hero that needs buffs, particularly because her kit is bad or she doesn't have a place. It's more because she's kind of starting to get outdated, right? And now you're wondering, what do you mean? What do you mean by outdated? Well, all the current control units that are meta, right? So things like Fairytale Tenebra, who's still used here and there, AOL, right? All these big, even Polides, right? They're able to have a presence outside of Hihi debuff, right? So even things like Solitaria, right, who's another really good unit, has self-protection, right, is able to strip immunity and is essentially pretty self-sufficient. Most control units right now are pretty self-sufficient for them to actually be able to function. On the other hand, ML Aramentia is strictly attached to actually having someone set up for her, which is the biggest reason is because RS3 is one of the harshest stun mechanics in the game, right? It is a really good. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you guys that this is not a good skill. This is an incredibly powerful skill. The S3's ability to stun, burn, and apply unhealable, it is crushing if you actually get the skill off. The problem is that we do have quite a lot of anti-control, and the fact that there's a lot of really good anti-control, and the fact that she's not a self-sufficient unit is what really dampers down what she's actually able to do. Now, there's two ways around to actually buffing her. One would be to actually give her some form of buff strip. This could be extremely dangerous because, again, that would make a very, very crushing S3. This is a crazy, like, if this had a strip, she would instantly become, like, really strong, right? She would be really, really scary, and it would force you to have Mediator and other units because, man, that's rough, right? That is rough. So if they did that, I wouldn't want them to do the reduced buff duration that they've been doing, but rather a one buff strip similar to Fairy Tale Tenebria. So that way things like Fallen Cecilia can still get around Moonlight Aramentia. It's not something that you have to, like, be afraid that you're just going to get completely stunned. That's one of the ways that I could see them buffing her. The other way I could see them buffing her is actually doing more with the burns. They always seem to be scared of making burns reliable. So giving her reliability on the burns, or making it so she has a built-in crown. And I honestly would like to see the built-in crown. I think if I had more selection on what artifact I could actually use on my Silverblade Aramentia, I would be much happier. So I would like to see kind of like a built-in crown to be added to the S2, so she becomes this burning control mage. So increase the rates of the burn so she's able to land burns more reliably, and make it so it has a built-in crown effect. It doesn't have to be crown, you know, they could do provoke, they could do something along those lines, but I would like to see them buff her because right now, compared to other control units, she's way too reliant on different units, and the effect is impactful. The S3 is very impactful, but again, it's a very long cooldown skill. It's a 5-turn cooldown. She does the S3, and you're supposed to win off of that S3, but the fact that you have to set it up before, and that on top of that, there's heroes that can completely shut her down, again, like Mediator and Dilibet, has made it significantly harder to actually use Silverblade Aramentia, right? So again, there's ways to actually buff her. I'm not exactly what the best way would be. She has gotten buffs in the past. She also has gotten nerfs in the past because of how dangerous S3 can be. But I think we've gotten to a point that there's enough counters to control that it would be cool to see her at least get crown on this S2 to free up her slot, right? To be able to actually free up her artifact slot. Honestly, that's all I would really want, and I would definitely be using mine a lot more. But now we're getting to the top 3, which are the ones that I most likely will put on here because I think they're the ones that most deserve it. At number 3, we have none other than Martial Artist Ken. Martial Artist Ken, even though he just got a buff, still feels like outdated, and it's just countered by so many mechanics already, right? Like, it's just like with every patch, he becomes more and more obsolete, right? There is very, very few situations where you should actually be taking ML Ken. The biggest one, he's actually a pretty decent Belian counter in Guild Wars, right? I'm not gonna lie to you, he's actually really good at that role. He's actually an incredibly good Belian, and even in some situations, see Lilius counter in Guild Wars, right? In an arena, in controlled environments, where there's not a lot of other things you can worry about, and you know all the threats. But in RTA, there's a lot of heroes that can actually get around his mechanics. Landy, Spectre Tenebria, Hua, who's another really popular unit right now. Rimuru, because Rimuru just does way too much damage for him to keep up. Rylet, again, because just Rylet can just melt him. Cleaves, he can do decent against, but again, it's just, there's too much damage, right? There's too much damage floating around, and enough non-counter-attack skills that he doesn't bring enough to the table to warrant actually taking him. Again, he can have some relative success in certain cleave situations, right? There are places, especially in Guilds and Arena, he's still a really solid option, but in RTA, he's not that good. And even in Guild Wars and in Arena, it's just very, very, very fringe situations that you can really be bringing ML Ken. It's just something that I feel like his kit is just outdated in the fact that his S3, all it's doing is essentially giving him attack buff and doing some decent AoE damage. That part I cannot lie, it's actually pretty good AoE damage. His S1 does really great damage, but I think that the way that the mechanic works with the way that the counterattack works, it's hard to actually balance him. It's something that I will almost need a rework. But it's cool to have a dark hero that counterattacks when you crit on him. That's something you don't want to hit, right? That's cool. Like Emo Celine is really well done, and I think Emo Celine is basically just Emo Ken in a way, because Emo Celine has an impactful S3, has a really strong S1, but also has ways to survive and to be able to do things, can self-cleanse, right? She has all these different tools that Emo Ken doesn't have, and because of that, doesn't rely as much on not just getting one tap, right? Again, not too sure how you would actually buff him, but he definitely needs a little bit of love. It's just very rare scenarios where you actually take him, just very, very low niches. But now, number 2, we have none other than Desert Bulsar. So why Desert Bulsar? Again, another hero that got buffed. The biggest thing, honestly, with this character, it's just he doesn't have an identity. That to me is the biggest problem with Desert Bulsar. He has things, right? He has an S1 that heals AoE. That's cool, right? There's a lot of healers. There's a lot of people that heal. And it's a nice little stun. This can be annoying, right? But it can be pretty much comparable to something like Maid Chloe. Whereas Maid Chloe can get Soul Burn, extra turn attack, and can only heal 2 allies. He heals all allies, but the healing is not as large as someone like Maid Chloe. Maid Chloe's healing is actually pretty criminal, right? So it's, again, not the craziest kill on the planet. DS2 is the one that actually lets him heal based on the attack, which again lowers his attack significantly. Or his healing, right? Because it's based on his attack, and you're not building like one-shotter DJB, right? That's not a build right now. And then of course you have the S3, which is the most unique aspect of it. It's immunity, it cleanses debuffs, and its CR pushes by 30%. Really strong skill, and it also gives him a adamant shield passive, so he can actually survive, so he can actually get to his S3. The problem is that there's just so many other heroes that do his job but better, right? Mediator Cowick, basically immune to debuffs, better at dealing with debuffs than DJ Bulsar, provides more support, provides more buffs than the immunity. Yes, it doesn't push up, but again, you do get a lot more value, right? Or someone like Mediator Cowick, someone like Maid Chloe, right? Even though she doesn't provide immunity like she does, he cleanses 2, and most scenarios 2 is often enough to cleanse the party. That's usually enough to finish off. Has about the same amount of AR, has more impact because you're able to get that attack buff and get the revive buff, right? So and then it's just, there's so many other heroes that are good at dealing with debuffs that he just doesn't have an identity. Like, where would you take him that you wouldn't take anyone else? And I do know people that actually use them on counter set and love their DJ Bulsars and have a lot of fun with them. Someone in the Discord actually has a really good counter set DJ Bulsar, and he uses it as strictly as a healer. Really, really cool playstyle. So definitely can still be used. And the come arenas, I also have seen people run 280 speed DJ Bulsars, right, to actually set up into cleave, which is really cool. But right now, it just feels like people are pushing because they think it's cool, they think it's a cool skill, and they're pushing him because they like the play pattern. But he doesn't really have an identity that he's bringing to the table, right? Which is why I honestly think he needs something, man. And I think chaining this passive would be the first place that I would start, right? Because right now it's just, I don't know, it's just not unique, right? It's just, okay, heal based on your attack, right? It would be cool to see something more with this, right? But he definitely needs a little bit of love. And then last but definitely not least, this is one that I didn't think about until recently, but it's Dark Corvus. I never thought I'd actually have to talk about him and that he'd ever be on a top potential buffs, right? Guild Wars meta has changed a lot, and this hero has always been a Guild Wars only hero. The reason why people always were like, oh yeah, Dark Corvus, is because Dark Corvus was literally free low. If you had a Dark Corvus, you were guaranteed to win 3-3 every single time you went into Guild Wars, right? That's how strong he was. And he's still strong into certain teams. But that like menace to society Guild Wars Dark Corvus, honestly, is too slow. Like, it's just too slow. In today's Guild War meta, things are fast, things are snappy, things are getting killed quick, right? There's removes, there's sea liliuses that can provoke dual attack and bring things in. There's injury, right? A lot more people are bringing injury, so he's definitely not seeing as much play as he used to, right? Is he still seeing play? Absolutely. I still occasionally will see my defense, and there will be people that will Dark Corvus it because I run a tank defense. He still cracks those tanky Bruiser defenses quite well, and he's still a really, really good dark tank, right? Especially into things like sea lilius, again, because they scale up. As long as you have a healer to cleanse him and keep him alive, he'll be able to kill most sea lilius teams, right? So he's not completely off the meta. He's still useful, but it's just, not only is his usage waning, but he already had such a specific niche, and that's getting taken away from him, right? There's something that you can't really use him in arena, you can't really use him in PvE. You used to be able to, right? Because there was some really weird PvE content back in the day, but now it's just kind of like he's a very fringe Guild Wars unit when there's so many other better options. that will give you more value in other game modes, right? So it's one of those things that Dark Corvus is honestly not in a great spot, right? Really weird to actually say that because he's always been like this menace in Guild Wars. But it's just a simple kit, just starting to get a little outdated, right? And it'll be cool to see the super cool Dark Knight be able to come back into the meta. Maybe expand his niche in Guild Wars, or maybe expand them more as the Dark Tank, right? Which would be kind of cool, right? Maybe expand the mechanic on countering light. That could also be something that would be cool, right? There's ways that they could definitely tweak them. But definitely, I like the idea of having a unit that it's scary, that's building up to something, but you need to bring more to the table and actually bring something unique. Being a Dark Tank, honestly, pretty nice for Guild Wars. But for Arena, things are just too fast. And he's not keeping up. And RTA, it's fine if not all units are RTA. That's fine. But getting good value would be nice out of the MO heroes. But that's going to be all for the heroes. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you think one was a good suggestion, a bad suggestion, you can just type King Blair. These are the worst suggestions I've ever seen in my life. But at the end of the day, please make sure to do this survey. Make sure your voices are heard. Make sure you're doing this. It's just always nice to be able to have your own input and be able to say what you want to see, right? So that's always nice to be able to know, to show that and all that good stuff. But that is going to be all I have for you guys today, and I will see you next time. Peace.